Now it's time to welcome our first speaker, Cheryl Strong. Cheryl is a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working with endangered species along the Oregon coast, including shoreboard the western snowy plover. Cheryl will talk about her career path in becoming a wildlife biologist, the cool animals she's been able to see or handle in person, and what it's like to work for the federal government. So Cheryl, you may now share your screen and begin your presentation.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, super. Okay, so as Lindsay said, my name is Cheryl Strong. I work at the Newport Field Office, which is located in Central Coastal Oregon at the Hadfield Marine Science Center. And I'm going to talk about what a wildlife biologist does all day. Except that now my screen will not advance. Okay, did it advance?
Yes.
Okay, so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which is the agency that I work for, is an agency of the federal government that is dedicated to the management of wildlife and natural habitats. So this includes fish, it includes birds, it includes mammals, it includes insects, and it includes plants, and the habitats that all of these things need to live in. So I'm going to show you this cool video that someone produced for us. This gives you a really good feeling about what it's like to be a field biologist. And someone let me know if this does not work.
Minute 1.
Every time you hear a bird, make sure you put the time, distance, direction.
Minute 6. Minute 10.
Two biologists do the bulk of the Don Edwards Refuge, so the 30,000 acres, and then one wildlife refuge specialist for that vernal pool unit.
Ostracods, copepods, Cladocera.
Tadpole shrimp.
43.6. Okay, this bird's gonna get a size 6 as well. Apparently these guys are being released tomorrow to freedom.
So how about we start like here and go across?
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that tadpole shrimp.
Yay!
C4 is closed and heavy.
Ooh.
Oh gosh, we got a tiny animal in here. Okay. Take a look at this. This is a little male.
The bay used to be surrounded by tidal marsh. 85 and 90% of that has been lost.
It's the habitat that's disappearing because it's easy to develop. And that's what's happened throughout California. We're trying to improve the habitat as much as possible.
That video was produced at a National Wildlife Refuge that I used to work at, in California, but it gives you a really good idea of what it's like to be out as a field biologist. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service programs include national wildlife refuges, which is something like that video that you just saw. It includes migratory birds, and it includes working with endangered species, fisheries, international programs, and law enforcement. And the program that I currently work for is the Endangered Species Program. There are lots of different jobs that you can have within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Managers, there's outreach and environmental education that work with a lot of school groups. We have our own law enforcement, administration, maintenance, habitat restoration, all kinds of stuff. But of course, the coolest job that you can have with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is to be a wildlife biologist. One of the best parts of my job and of being a wildlife biologist in general is the amount of variation that you have within your job. So you can do things like take water samples and do water level monitoring where you're standing knee deep in water. You help mend fences. You can work on various types of monitoring programs, both for birds, like the lower left here with this banded bird. This is a tiny snowy plover chick. I work with students to teach them how to do monitoring of birds, like this woman here is holding this sparrow. And then of course we do some small mammal monitoring as well. You get to use some really cool equipment and go out on some really interesting things, like this is airboat right here, which is how we used to do some of our bird surveys. Another cool thing is the variety of people that you get to work with, in addition to the variety of tools you get to drive around. Work with a lot of volunteers on vegetation management, which is pulling weeds basically. I've been out with film crews to talk about our work on endangered species and habitat restoration. And then you get to climb some odd looking structures to take down nests for birds that are nesting where they are not supposed to be nesting. So now I work on the Oregon coast, and the species that I work on the most is called a western snowy plover. This is a snowy plover right here. I also have one in my hand, which is right here, just so you can get an idea of the size of these birds. This is obviously made out of wood. So I do some surveys for birds on the coast, and but more than actually going out and survey for the birds, I help to manage the beaches for birds and help other people manage their beaches for birds. So in addition to the snowy plovers, which require the Oregon coast and actually all of the West Coast to nest on, all of us as people also like to go to the beach. And so you have to balance out people use of the beaches as well as birds that utilize these beaches. So that's how I spend a fair amount of my time is trying to balance out these two different beach using activities. Obviously, people walking around on the beach like that can live in areas where there are also snowy plovers, but things like riding ATVs on the dunes, that doesn't work so well when you've got snowy plovers out there as well. So you need some sort of separation of where people can go and where the birds can go. This is a map of the Oregon coast. So most of the Oregon coast is managed by Oregon Parks and Recs Department. And so a lot of these are state parks that are shown down here all along the edge. Snowy plovers have been doing very, very well in Oregon, and we're very pleased with how well they're doing. But more plovers obviously means more management of these beaches, especially when you have areas with lots of people. This is a snowy plover chick right here and a snowy plover egg. And I put this on here to show you how well camouflaged these birds are on the beach. They nest right on the sand and right on the beach. And if you were just walking by, you would most likely never see them unless they were moving around. Okay, Kate, we have our first poll question. How many legs does a western snowy plover have? If you could please vote.
Oh, lots of answers coming in fast and furious here. We're going to close the poll in just a couple seconds.
Excellent. Everyone got this question right. Snowy plovers do indeed have 2 legs. However, look at this picture, if we can close the poll. And everybody look down here and see how many legs does this plover appear to have? 2, 4, 6, at least 6, maybe 8. So what's going on here is this is a female snowy plover, and on cold, windy days when she has very small chicks, these chicks cannot thermoregulate very well, which means they can't keep themselves warm. So all the chicks are all nestled underneath her, trying to get warm. And I really like this picture because it just looks like a plover with too many legs. Okay, we have another poll. Take a look at these two birds here and then tell me, what do you think these two birds are doing?
Okay, just a couple more seconds. Make your choice.
Excellent, we got some variety. Dancing, fighting, and blowing around in the woods. So 8 people for the first 2 and 2 people for the last one. I find all these to be somewhat reasonable answers. But these two, actually, this is 2 males, and they're not perhaps exactly fighting, but they are showing some territorial displays. They're saying, this is my patch of beach, and I don't want you here. And then take a look at these colors on their legs here. You see that they both have different colored leg bands. And this is a way for us and our researchers to tell individual birds apart. So by looking at the colors of these birds, they can tell exactly where these birds nested, where they hatched out of, and how old they are. Okay, another aspect of my job, which is just sort of started up recently, is I've become the sea turtle contact for the Fish and Wildlife Service for the Oregon coast. Sea turtles, we have 5 species of sea turtles that are offshore here, and they do not normally come ashore on the Oregon coast unless they are not in good shape. They don't nest here, and sea turtles that aren't nesting are really out to sea. So if they wash up on the Oregon coast, it's usually because they have got caught in some temperature anomaly and they're basically cold stunned, which just means they're really just too cold. So they wash ashore here, people find them and they call us. We take them to the Oregon Coast Aquarium where they hold them for a few days. And then normally we will try and transport them down to Southern California where they can release them in warmer waters. So this is kind of exciting for me. I've never actually worked with sea turtles before, and I hope to be able to transport some live and happy sea turtles this winter. Okay, so those are all the cool things you can do as a wildlife biologist, and what does it take sort of to want to become a wildlife biologist in the first place? These are sort of a list of skills to be able to work independently, to as well as a team member, to have good verbal and written skills, good observation skills, some patience, some flexibility, some curiosity. And then it really helps if you like being outside and if you do not mind getting dirty, because a lot of the job is sort of traipsing around in the woods, in the marsh, on the beach, in all kinds of weather. And so you have to be able to appreciate that to some extent. Okay, I think we have another poll question. Kate. What is your favorite subject in school? Math, English, science, social studies, lunch.
Is lunch really a subject?
Well,
It could be.
Not really, but I like lunch.
Cheryl, you didn't include recess.
That was my trade-off, lunch or recess. Both.
I'm just stalling, trying to get a couple more seconds out there. Most everybody's answered those, so we're going to close the poll.
Math, English, science. I guess this was, we're sort of preaching to a known audience here. So 6% math, 33% English, 61% science, No one's favorite is social studies, and shockingly, no one's favorite is lunch. So the fact that science is your favorite subject for a lot of you, as well as math, and to some extent English too, all those are good background subjects for being a wildlife biologist. For a lot of jobs, you need a 4-year college education. And a lot of those, at least with the Fish and Wildlife Service, you need a major in biological sciences. And then optional for different jobs and higher level positions, you need some graduate school work as well. So I have a 4-year degree from the University of California, Santa Barbara in ecology and evolution. And I have a master's degree in Bachelor of Science, or Master's of Science from Southeastern Louisiana University. So quite a variety. So if you have a biology degree, who can you work for? So you don't just have to work for the federal government, you can work for state agencies. And we're gonna talk to somebody later today who works for a state agency. But you can also work for local agencies, you can work for universities, and there's a whole variety of places you can work for as a wildlife biologist. Okay, so let's say you're in middle school and you're not quite ready to get a job yet. What can you do now to help you get started and becoming a wildlife biologist and see if something you're really interested in? So some of these are a little bit harder right now, given the coronavirus situation. But in general, you can join a nature club or a science club in your local community, spend some time outside with your friends and family, visit your local parks, take those math and science classes in school. You can, when you're a little bit older, especially, you can volunteer at your local refuge, your local park or zoo, whatever is local to you that takes volunteers. Go there and volunteer and work with them. And then at 15 to 18 years old, you can join the Youth Conservation Corps, and they do all kinds of really great projects on refuges as well as other places. Okay, what else can you do to help? I think we have one more poll question. What can you do to help not just Oregon wildlife, but all wildlife, which would include these shorebirds like western snowy plovers that we're talking about? So keep your dogs from chasing birds on the beach, keep your cats safely indoors, join a beach cleanup event, all of the above. Okay, good. Yes, on keep your dogs from chasing birds on the beach. Yes, joining a beach cleanup, but really all of the above, 80% of you said that. And that is true, including keeping your cat safely indoors. So on the left is that's the map of Oregon. Solve is a group that does a lot of beach cleanups on the coast of Oregon. And those are the most littered items that they've seen. So not littering obviously would go along with what you can do to help. Dogs do a lot of disturbance on the beach. Dogs love to run on the beach, and it's okay. There's a lot of beaches that are open to dogs, but don't let them chase wildlife or harass wildlife in any way. And then cats. I have 2 cats. I think cats are wonderful, but cats are best kept inside. They do a lot of damage to wildlife, including bringing you dead animals on your doorstep on occasion. It's also safer for them. They don't get hit by cars when they're inside your house. Okay, and I think that's it. And I am happy to take any questions, and my contact info is on there as well.
Fantastic, Cheryl. Thank you so much for giving us insight into what it takes to become a wildlife biologist. I'm sure there are many ways to do it, but you did a nice job of highlighting the subjects needed to study and just kind of how you got there yourself. So thank you so much. We have a question from Noelle wanting to know how long you've researched birds. You may have mentioned it, but it doesn't hurt to go back.
My goodness. Okay, so I probably started doing research on birds as my master's thesis, and I did work with birds in Louisiana. And then I also, as part of that, worked in the Brazilian Amazon rainforest for a while. So that was in the 90s. So probably 25 years or so going on.
That's impressive, Cheryl. What were you doing in the Amazon? Do you mind if I ask?
No, we were studying the movements of a group of birds called ant birds. So these are understory forest birds. They don't go up in the trees. They almost always stay on the ground. And they're called ant birds because they follow around army ants and they eat all the things that are scared up by a swarm of army ants, which is basically everything is scared up by army ants.
Wow. So how did you come across that experience or that opportunity?
I had the opportunity to work with a professor who had been researching birds in the Amazon for probably 10 to 15 years already. And so I went to work for him for a while.
So this was part of your graduate degree?
Yes, and it was truly, truly an amazing experience.
So it sounds like if you want to pursue graduate studies, you may be able to open doors. If our participants are interested in graduate studies, it could open doors to studying and going to a lot of really cool places.
Yes, absolutely. And I had
Studying birds, okay.
Yeah.
Or other wildlife for that matter. Very cool. We have a question from Renee asking about a bump on one of the bird's beaks. I believe it was an image in your presentation, and I didn't get a chance to see which slide that was from. Do you know which one she's talking about?
Is it this pelican, perhaps?
That looks like it might be it, yes.
Okay, that's an American white pelican. And during the nesting season, the males get a bump like this. In fact, that bump gets a lot bigger sometimes. Apparently, that bump is considered sexy to female pelicans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. So we have a question from Annika asking how many snowy plovers you've seen or helped. Would you be able to quantify an estimate for us?
That I have personally seen or helped, dozens probably. I used to get to band the chicks. Oops, the other direction, hold on. So these are the chicks down there. So if you get to them right when they hatch, they don't move around. They're just sitting there in the nest, sort of waking up from being out of the egg. But they run off and join their parents within hours of hatching. So you have to get there right when they're out of the egg, and then you can hold them. They kind of look like they're asleep in your hand, and you can put these color bands on them. So I haven't been banding birds for the past couple of years, but in my past life, I did get to band a couple dozen snowy plover chicks.
Very cool. Thank you, Cheryl. We have a question from Vera. Are dune buggies allowed where there are plovers in Florence? That's a great question.
So Florence is maybe where that picture comes from, but Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area is managed by the U.S. Forest Service. And the Forest Service does an excellent job of delineating where the ATVs can go and can't go, right? And then they have other areas set aside for where the snowy plovers can nest. The snowy plovers do not always understand that. So sometimes plovers go into where the ATV riders are, but and then we sort of make them, if there's a nest in the area, then we cordon it off and we keep the riders out of the way. But generally speaking, yes, they do a really good job of separating out, you know, which side of the beach is for which.
Thank you. And just to clarify, and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are beachgoers, my friends, and you find yourself on the beach in the summertime, I believe it's like March through September, and you see like yellow ribboned locations that say do not cross nesting area. Yeah, there's a sign. So that's what's going on. So the next time you're at the beach, maybe through March through September, and you see yellow rope, that is a marked off plover nesting site. And so it's marked off to protect the plover nests, correct, Cheryl?
Exactly, and you can see on this sign here, it says stay on wet sand. Plovers will only nest on the dry sand because obviously they don't want their eggs to get wet. So if you are walking on the wet sand, then you will be out of the way of those plovers.
Very good. Fantastic. Well, I wish we could keep asking you questions, Cheryl. It's not every day you get to talk to a real life wildlife biologist. So thank you so much for your time and fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.